Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Speaking Legally, where the legal meets the cultural. Here with our two legal experts, Edward Pichardo Esquire and Royce Russell Esquire. So we're glad that you are able to join us again today. 4 p.m. Wednesdays is usually when we're here talking about what's happening in community, relating it to what we as a community need to be aware of, and also sharing some levity moments when we can. But I'll let my co hosts go ahead and introduce themselves. As we can see, one of our co hosts is moving about, but he is in the building. So we'll start with you, Senor Pichardo. ¿Cómo está? Buenas tardes.
No, gracias. Muy bien, Stacy. Hola, everyone. Good afternoon, mi gentes. Glad to have you here today on Speaking Legally. I'm sure you'll find the content educational as well as spiritually uplifting. We got some important stuff to talk to here about. We're ready to educate. We're ready to do it. So, hola y buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes. And hey, Richard Russell, good to see you. I hope all is well and everyone who is either tuning in live or catching the replay. Mr. Russell, how are you today?
I'm doing all right. I'm in the streets of New York City. For those that don't think that we practice law for real, we do. You know what I mean? All day, every day. As I just left what they call Metropolitan Detention Center, which is a federal prison in Brooklyn. But I would be remiss if I did not make this show. I mean, the community is just too important to me and the information is just too vital. So I am pulled over on East 52nd Street and First Avenue, sitting in the car, ready to do what we do, holding the cell phone. Thank God for Apple, right? We got something going on here with Apple. And I'm going to put my lenses on and we're going to get busy. So let's get busy. Let's do what we
Yeah,
do.
all the free advertising you're giving until they sponsor the show. We don't share what what we're actually using.
Well, we don't want a sponsor from MDC, that's for sure. But Apple, I understand. Apple, I fully understand.
Oh my goodness. Well, we have quite a bit to talk about today. So let's jump into it. Right now, there is news about this allegedly discriminatory practice here. What is happening with our brothers and sisters in Puerto Rico and the Supreme Court ruling allowing for exclusions? What is this, Senor
Well,
Pajaro?
what's basically happening here is that the United States Supreme Court has basically said that you don't have to provide the same benefits to Puerto Ricans that you do to individuals living within the 50 states, DC, and an incorporated territory like the island of Palmyra Atoll that's out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. This decision is basically rooted in a series of cases early in the century that were themselves based on some very racist rationale and racist reasoning. For some of you that may or may not be aware, but you may have heard of this. You may have heard of the Spanish-American War back in the 1800s. You may have heard of Teddy Roosevelt and all of that participating in that war. What ended up happening at the end of that war was the United States transformed itself into an empire, if you will. It acquired territories from the Spanish Empire at that time. Puerto Rico, Cuba, Guam, the Philippines, which was a Spanish territory, and some others. And so after acquiring these territories, the question came up, well, are these people citizens? Or are they U.S. citizens? Are they not? If they are U.S. citizens, do they enjoy all the rights accorded under the United States Constitution? The answer to that was no. And the way they kind of divided it up was that some territories were called incorporated, labeled as incorporated, and others as unincorporated, meaning either you on the path to statehood, or if you were not on the path to statehood, then you were to be treated differently. And when you read the literature, you read the rationalizations, you read the history. Some of those that were considered not on the path was for very, racist cultural reasons, and that included Puerto Rico. And so what happened here, quite frankly, is that a gentleman by the name of Luis Vaello Madero was living in New York, and he was receiving SSI benefits, Social Security income, supplemental income, which is different from Social Security proper, which is based on how much you earned while you were working, and then that determines your benefit at the end once you reach the age of retirement and eligibility. SSI works a little differently. It's for those who are disabled, blind, or 65 or older that are of low income and need, that supplemental benefit to be able to live and survive. The problem here is that the law surrounding that requires, as I stated earlier, you to be a resident within the 50 states. And so what happens here is Luis Vaello Madero is in New York. He's getting his benefits, but at some point he moves to Puerto Rico and he continues to get the benefit. Listen, I hate to say it, but it's not unusual for folks in Puerto Rico to, who say we're living a good part of their life within the 50 states to then move to Puerto Rico and, use that SSI benefit to live out there. The question is like, what is wrong with that? I mean, Puerto Rico is supposed to be part of the United States, a territory of the United States. Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens, so why aren't you getting that benefit? Well, what the Supreme Court here said basically is that, listen, Puerto Ricans are exempt from certain taxes, so the same way they exempt from certain taxes because of their status, they can also be exempt from certain benefits, including SSI. And in this case, what ended up happening was the government is saying that they didn't know that Mr. Madero had moved to Puerto Rico. And once they found out, they wanted the benefits that they had paid him during the time that he was no longer in the United States. They wanted him to pay that back. I believe it's about $28,000, and if you get SSI, that means it's because you're poor, and $28,000 really. And so Mr. Madero ends up fighting the government on this and says, no, listen, I'm going to rely on the equal protection due process component of the due. I'm going to rely on the equal protection component of the due process clause, which is contained in the Fifth Amendment, and argue that I should be treated the same as those in the states. The district court agreed with Mr. Madero. The Court of Appeals agreed with Mr. Madero. What does the government do? They take this all the way to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court grants what's called certiorari, which is a fancy way of saying we'll hear the case. The issues are issues that, we feel are within our jurisdiction, if you will, to decide on. And unfortunately, they overturn. They decide that no, Congress had a rational basis for deciding to not extend this benefit to Puerto Ricans or others in the same situation, which I believe includes Guam and other territories that are not, quote unquote, incorporated. And so, now the ruling, I didn't go through the many page ruling, and I plan to, but I'm not sure if they're going to remand or send the case back down for the determination as to whether or not he actually has to pay back this money. But it sounds like he may, But listen, the money is the money. The big thing here is that, Puerto Ricans continue to be treated in a very discriminatory and harmful way. It's disgraceful This was actually an 8-1 decision. The only dissenting opinion was from Justice Sotomayor Boricua herself, Pau Boricua, who said, there is no rational basis. There's no reason why, disabled Puerto Ricans should not be allowed to draw this benefit while home in Puerto Rico. This is just plain wrong. So they've basically punted it to Congress. Congress has the ability at this point to possibly do the right thing and say, you know what, we need to change the law, change the requirement that you have to be within the 50 states or DC to draw this benefit, and allow those in the territories as well, including Puerto Rico, to be able to get this benefit.
So now let me tell you something. This is not something that's foreign, though. I mean, I know it's being highlighted because it's dealing with Puerto Rico. You have those that have been suffering from this from the Virgin Islands for years and years and years. And, as each culture get their legs underneath them economically and politically, then you hear the resurgence of these issues come about again. And so now you're hearing this issue come about again. I just want us to be mindful and understand that the only reason why this individual's case was heard in the Supreme Court, or he was able to even go that far and litigate this matter, is that there's some firm or some entity out there that took this case on pro bono. Because what is underlying what Ed has said is that the person that is being victimized here, the gentleman who brought the lawsuit, the reason why he has SSI is because he can't work. The reason why he has SSI is because he needs to supplement to his income and doesn't have enough income and doesn't have the retirement or any other means of advancing economically. So that means someone had to take this case on pro bono. And the reason why that's important is because there's many cases like this that don't get heard, right? This is the case that got to the Supreme Court. So someone can hear it. You know how many cases were heard of this type before it went to the Supreme Court? You know how many people had to just decide, you know what, I'm going to pay this money back to the government because I don't want no problems. You know what I mean? Me don't want no problems, so I go and pay it, and that's that. And so I'm glad it's in the news. It does, once again, bring the cultural and the legal together, right? Because this is cultural. On its face, some would argue that it's proper because, look, there's other benefits that Puerto Ricans are getting. They're just not getting this one. But at the end of the day, if I'm American, I'm American. Like that's it. The bottom line, I should get everything that's afforded to me, right?
And I think
no skimming.
so. It's also sad that we're even having a discussion about individuals who give the ultimate sacrifice to serve this country and have to go through this sort of legal recourse to just survive. There's something wrong with that. I mean, all these freedoms that we're enjoying and the individuals who are making these decisions, it's because of the sacrifice of those who serve our country, and that in these territories, they're not able to get benefits. It doesn't make sense to me.
One of the things that I also want everyone to be mindful, and I don't want everybody to start to get nervous, right? Ed has said that this is SSI. So this is a supplement to Social Security. If you've been working in the United States and you've been paying into Social Security, and now you have the age where you can receive a Social Security check, you can feel free to move wherever you want to move to. You understand what I mean? I don't want you to feel that, oh, now this law is limiting me. You paid into Social Security, you get that back. What this is talking about is SSI, which is a distinction, still just as important, but is a distinction from paying into Social Security and being able to receive that money back. So if those who have plans that they want to retire to Jamaica, they want to retire to Puerto Rico, they want to retire to some other place, you can look into it, but I don't believe you'll be affected.
Well, it's just something. And then I know our friend Kevin is here. He just got back on a news story that we haven't covered yet. He was in West Virginia to cover the funeral for Quintez Burks, who was found dead in a local jail cell. So that's something we can look into to talk about. But thank you for tuning in after travels to be here. And this whole conversation going back now to the ruling, I applaud whoever took the case pro bono to really lift this up again. To your point, Mr. Russell, it's not the first time this has come up, but I don't know what both of you feel, and Senor Pichardo, what you're thinking, if there's anything that Congress will do after getting this ruling from Supreme Court.
Well, of course, I mean, listen, hope springs eternal, right? And the reason why I mention that is because Neil Gorsuch, one of the most conservative members on the court, gives a scathing discussion regarding what are called the insular cases. There were a number of cases that were decided by the court early in the century, in terms of this question of what Puerto Ricans get and don't get, and he talks about how that legacy has to be overturned. Those cases have to actually be overturned. And I think my understanding is that even Madero's lawyers didn't ask for those cases to be overturned, but he seems to indicate in his part of the decision, in his concurrence, that those cases do need to be overturned because the rationale that they're based on is fundamentally no longer comports with the thought nowadays, because back then the idea was, these people are inferior to to those on the mainland, meaning at that time they were talking about white people. These aren't white people, these are, others, and they're not, and we're superior. They're not culturally up to our level. Therefore, also that they aren't on their way to statehood, and that we're trying to help them get there, and and so forth. So those, so I'm hoping that with that in mind, maybe those senators who are otherwise, part of the Republican Party or conservative may join Democrats in the Senate to go ahead and pass a change in this law, but that remains to be seen. I would hope that in the House it's a done deal, because, Puerto Ricans are a major constituency of the Democratic Party. Latinos certainly are. On the Senate end, I hope that it can be passed. So, I'm hoping, that, that this change in the law is able to pass, but, right now, nothing is certain. Shoot, you may have West Virginia, and Kissing Cinema out west may decide, oh no, they don't need to get these benefits. I mean, you just never know sometimes. But
I can tell you one thing. I can tell you one thing. Given the current politics and how the parties are not seeing anything eye to eye, it's more 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. And my own opinion is that the Democrats don't stand on all four when they should and when they can to push something through. So when you talk about hope, my response to that. When you say hope, what I say is hope don't live in this building. She damn sure don't live in this apartment. So
Well, we're gonna follow this one.
Well, I'm talking more from even political, because I know for sure.
I'm talking political too.
Because in recent years, the Republicans have been making overtures to the Latino community, and this might be one where they may say, what, this might inure to our benefit in the long run. Let's see, because there are serious culture wars taking place.
It will only happen if, as we say in speaking legally, the culture meets the legal. If Latino folks don't make it a priority for themselves, no one's going to reach over to say, oh yeah, let's do this great thing for quote unquote those people, and quote unquote those people will remember us. It has to work the other way around.
Well, we definitely will see what happens. We hope that it does get to the point where everyone who has served, this should be just one of those rights. Like, I know we can go back and forth on what they get, what they don't get, but it would just seem to me when you make that kind of sacrifice that you shouldn't have to fight that hard for SSI. But we are on to the next unfortunate story, in my opinion, because I can't even believe this is where we are now. When we talk about politics, when we talk about decision makers, when we talk about the ability to sign into law, now we have a bill that is allowing people in the state of Georgia to carry handguns without a license.
Now, you know what's interesting about this? I always say, you know, while we're playing checkers, majority folks are playing chess. You can take that any way you want to, whatever state you live in, you define who's the majority. But while we're playing checkers, majority is playing chess. And so what do I mean by that? One of the things that I always touted just in at cocktails and talking to folks, whether on this show or off this show, in the highways and the byways, is that if you want to see change in gun laws, you have more people of color applying for guns. Then you will see the law change, more restrictions, more requirements, because the fear that is already plagued within America, that people of color are more violent, and we don't want those people, in quotes, I'll use it again, referring to my own, to have this type of power, because you know it's okay for them to have this type of power in their community where they're killing each other in their community, but how dare they be able to walk around? Well, I must say, the chess players are really moving across the board, because they said they got you one. I'm going to take that pawn, Mr. Russell. You ain't even got to worry about folks of color going to apply for guns and us changing the law. We're going to change the law right in front of your face. Everybody who has one, now you can walk in the street with it. Everybody who has a permit, now you can, what they call carry, cash and carry. You can walk around with your gun on your holster. Now, you know my cynic viewpoint, but it's realistic, and the way I see it is that we already have the mysterious, I fear for my safety when it comes down to police encounters. I thought he had a weapon. I saw something, he reached, he moved. So now you're in a state where you could just carry your firearm wherever you want to go. You could just have it out, right? And now let's put the cherry on the top. If people of color are not, one, applying to have a gun, shame on them, right? Because everybody want to carry, why not myself? Two, if you're precluded because you have some criminal history, then now you're really in a catch-22, right? Because those who are carrying have the privilege because they don't have a criminal history to carry. You're the prey, in my view, and you're the one that they're going to say, oh, I thought he was carrying, and you don't have the right, or you didn't exercise the right to carry. So it's okay corral out here in out there in Atlanta. And let me tell you, the Republicans are moving and grooving. They're just swiping up the chessboard, swiping up. And this didn't get any traction until most recently, when you start talking about the primaries and who's voting for who, and the Republicans ensuring, one Republican ensuring that they get more traction than the next to push this through. That's what I have to say.
Well, I would imagine that law enforcement has an issue with this.
Well, don't imagine that, Ed, because in New York City, law enforcement is very powerful, and we know that pretty much what law enforcement says goes to a certain degree. I don't see anywhere in this article, and I didn't hear anything about any law enforcement agency saying this is a bad idea. Speak up, speak out, see something, say something.
But it's also giving a second measure that those with concealed weapon permits from other states have the ability to carry in Georgia as well. What are we living in?
Right. I mean, listen, you know, these laws are fine and dandy until the time comes for the application of them, which I would imagine is going to probably be discriminatory. I have a hard time believing that they're going to allow people of color to run around with these guns in a holster like it's the OK Corral and Tombstone, walking into supermarket, shopping malls, and other places strapped and you know, the gun visible, and nobody's going to inquire as to their status. Nobody's the reason why
You know, ooh, boy,
let me just say this, please. Let me say this. When I was practicing in Wisconsin, the big deal there was you could conceivably carry the gun visibly out. The problem was that you would have these repeated cases where law enforcement would charge an individual with disorderly conduct because of the shock value of people seeing it and being disturbed. And so that's what would discourage folks from actually walking around with the gun visible. And
wait. You gotta help me. You gotta help me out with that logic. I'm not grasping that. So they're charging you with disorderly conduct for having the gun out, but yet it's lawful to have the gun out. So the case automatically gets dismissed because it's lawful to have the gun out.
Yeah.
So you're just wasting my time. So the deterrence was to waste my time by having this.
Or to harass you, or to cause you eventually be like, you know what? I'm not even going to bother.
Well, here's the problem with that. I don't want to tell your age, but when last time you practiced in Wisconsin, you know, it was a long time ago. All right. That's number one. Number two, people are emboldened nowadays and than what they were back in the day, let's just say, right? Because I see a little salt and pepper on your beard, so you've been around a minute, right? And I know you for a minute. So
no, that's dye. I try to make it look
Here we go.
I hear you. That's that carbon monoxide in the air. I get it. It's cold in your house. I understand. But what I'm saying to that is that people are boldened. We've had a Trump era. I think the fact that people of color do not apply themselves in that fashion, like actually go and apply for a gun permit, right? So because you don't apply for it because you have the fears of, oh my God, I don't want to have a gun because then they're definitely going to kill me because they're already killing me when they say I don't have a gun. So now I have one, and you don't empower yourself. Those numbers are going to be so much smaller than the majority or white person that uses the law to their benefit, like we've seen during Black Lives protests on the lawn with the shotgun and the woman saying, come on my property, you name it. And as we saw with Aubrey, he's running and jogging, and we got it in the truck, and we shoot. Those folks, they're going to take hold of this and run with this all day and all night. We're the ones that looking in the rear view mirror talking about, oh, well, I don't want to make noise, or I don't want to ask, can I be I want to sit near the window.
I frankly don't even think it's a matter of that. I really do see it as application and enforcement. And the reason why I say that is it's rooted in history. When Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale and the Panthers in Oakland, California started carrying in open public to protect the community, the legislature, the police, first of all, the police were like, we don't care what the law says. We're not going to allow you to just be thinking you could walk around armed like that and confronting us. That's one. Two, even so we'll just change the law. I mean, I'm very interested in watching what unfolds and develops after that, because a lot of this is about, you know, I could see when the black folks start walking around with the gun open, folks are gonna say, oh no, he grabbed it and he showed an intent to use it. You said it a little earlier, the part about, well, I saw him reaching and so forth. That's what you're gonna get. I get.
But what I'm speaking to,
that we're gonna be allowed to just walk around strapped like that. I mean, especially if it's not within a rural context where, you know, you don't, I mean, in an urban area. And also I would be, because I haven't looked at this law. is the city of Atlanta allowed to exempt itself? I mean,
it doesn't state one or the other. But what I am stating to you is that we don't even get to that point until we have people utilize it and implement it. What you're talking about is when black folks do A. Well, black folks didn't do A just right now in exercising getting a gun in and of itself. So the fact that you're saying A and B, oh, come on, man.
Boy.
You could ring all the doorbells you want. I don't see hope coming to the door. You understand what I'm saying?
Well,
hope don't live here.
This part, I'm concerned about my family that lives in Georgia. People walking around just carrying, just out in the open. How did this pass?
And on top of this, how does this get passed?
That's what I said. How did this pass?
With all these concerns that you're bringing up, and I'm not fighting against you. I'm with you. We're talking, we having this talk together to the people that watch our show, Dr. Grant. This is what we airing it all out so they could take it and have another conversation, and they could tell two friends, and they could tell two friends. How did this pass? Where's everybody and all the concerns that we're talking about? How did this pass? Somebody ran on this campaign. 77% of Georgians wanted this to happen. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot.
And I'm very concerned as to what we'll see as a result of this. And please go and do the research and look this up. And if you have friends down there, I hope that they know. And what's interesting, it took 4 years to get this done. So this is not new, right? This has been going for a while. Right. And how did it slip through?
No. And actually, let me take that back. Slip through. Let me take back all words that denote or give the impression that this is something that happened in the middle of the night. We talk about this on our show all the time. And Ed, you profess this all the time. And Dr. Grant, you know it to be true. First, you have to speak it. Then you write it. And it gets bounced around a couple of times. Right, Ed? Am I lying? It gets bounced around. It gets tweaked. It gets talked about. It gets put down. It gets picked back up. It gets kicked a little bit. Then it's talked about again. And then the clouds and the stars and the moon lines up together. And next thing you know, it's a law. It's a bill. Voila.
Mm-hmm. So, but they still, well, here's the good news. Consumers still need to pass a background check to purchase a handgun from a licensed dealer. Oh, give me a break. And convicted felons, it's still illegal for them to carry.
See, you don't have to worry about a convicted felon getting a gun and carrying it out. He or she gonna get their gun, and they gonna carry it the way they gonna carry it. That's number one. Number two, for those who don't make the cutoff, which they're banking on, that's where the racist implementation comes in, right? If we squander and squash those numbers and make those numbers very, very, very small among people of color, then what you have is white people with guns walking around the state of Georgia. There's nothing racist about that statement. There's nothing insensitive about that statement. There's nothing that's prejudiced about that statement. That is a fact when you go through the numbers. That's a fact.
You know what I'm envisioning here? This sounds like The Purge. You ever watch those Purge movies?
Oh, I can't stand that show. Oh.
Yes.
The idea of it. I do know what it is, but the whole idea and the concept, I'm like, who comes up with this stuff? But, it is very concerning, very concerning. So as we move to the next story, because this one is really making me sick, like the thought of what this could potentially be, I just pray for safety for everyone in Georgia, including my family and friends. So someone who stays in the news, back again, he paid a $10,000 daily fines because he was found to be in contempt in New York, thanks to Attorney General Tish James.
Yeah, I mean, apparently the New York State Attorney General, Letitia James, in terms of the lawsuit against Trump, has obtained a discovery order, if you will, that documents and other things be turned over, and Trump has not been complying with that order. So finally, the attorneys from the AG's office said, Judge, you got to make them do it. And Trump's attorney was arguing, no, we've done all we could. I even went and spoke. I spoke to him about the documents or whatever, and he says he's turned over everything he has. Judge said, no, you know what? I'm going to fine you $10,000 for every day I find that you haven't complied with this order in terms of turning over all this information. Now, what's interesting with contempt, right, is the judge can do a fine, but the judge can also lock you up. Am I right?
Oh, hold it right there. Let's don't throw out the water too soon. Let's hold that. As Dr. Grant says,
push a pin in it.
Can you push a pin in it? You know what I mean? There's going to be a record that come out soon. It's going to push a pin in it, push a pin in it. And you're going to be dancing to that in the studio soon. Trademark exclusive. You got it. I hear you. I'm all the way with you, Brother Pichardo. Here's a couple of things that I'll say to that, right? One is, the AG has to make this a battle of wills between the judge and Donald Trump. Judge, look what he's doing to you. Look what he's saying about you. Look how he's being disrespectful to you. Look at what he's doing to the court system, which you preside over. That's how you get the fine. That's how you get the contempt order. That's how you get pushing the judge's button to make sure certain things happen that are punitive in nature. And is $10,000 a day punitive to Donald Trump? Nah, probably not. Probably not. And as you said, Ed, where's the criminal part? Once again, I'm going to ride the cultural train into the stop. I've tried federal cases, criminal cases. I've been involved in civil cases. And I've been even involved in investigations where judges have no problem telling a person of color of little means who has to work every single day that if you don't do A, B, and C, we're going to hold you in contempt. And that's no fine. That means you're actually going to be in jail. And you're going to be in jail for every day that you don't come to testify, you don't adhere to my rules and regulations. And that's heavy. That's heavy,
That is. So this is interesting.
Now, I would like to mention that I saw a clip earlier where, of course, Trump is appealing this decision.
But of course, and we didn't expect different.
Yeah, so now that's going to go to the appellate courts, and he's going to exhaust that whole thing until we get back to square one. So,
and Ed, can you verify or not? And sometimes with appeals, what they do is that the penalty or the decision still stands, rather than holding it in abeyance until the appellate court can make a decision. I'm hoping this is a scenario where the fines are still has to be paid.
I'm not sure.
Court. Yeah, I mean, look,
I'm not sure if it was stayed pending appeal. That's all. I'm not sure.
I'm hoping that is not the case, because then what happens is that the judge becomes enabled, right? It doesn't really the judge is not able to hand down and hand down the punitive consequence that he wants to hand down, and that's unfortunate. So let's hope that the penalties and the fines are still going on.
So as you're conducting the show in real time, coming from practicing law, please be safe out there. I show the viewing audience is concerned, hearing horns and sirens flying, to please be safe. But I salute our Attorney General for not letting this go and continuing to pursue justice in this matter. We'll see. Now, typically, before we go to the last story of the day, how long can this be sitting in appellate court?
Who knows? I mean,
it all depends when Ed decides to leave his day job and go and make a decision on it. It could be all day, all night.
Well, we'll be watching to see what happens. And talking about officials, we have another situation, as the commercial would say.
Yeah, well, here, I think we mentioned this on the last show, or 2 shows ago. As many of you are aware, former Lieutenant Governor Brian Benjamin has been indicted federal court. He resigned from his position as Lieutenant Governor. The problem, of course, is that he is on the ballot for Lieutenant Governor. The Lieutenant Governor position in New York State is separate and apart in terms of ballot from that of governor. And under the current law, the only way for him to be removed from the ballot at this point is either if he dies, moves out of the state, or one additional circumstance that I'm not recalling at this particular time. And he's still alive, so the death part is not on the table. And my understanding is that he's not moving to Jersey or Connecticut or anything like that. So,
and that's probably based upon his pretrial services restrictions.
Right. So what's happening right now is Hochul is now trying to get the Assembly and the Senate to pass a law that will allow the circumstances by which one can come off the ballot to cover what is being called extraordinary circumstances. The person has received a diagnosis of life-threatening illness. The person
and let me interrupt you. You said extraordinary circumstances. I like to say it a little differently from St. Mary's, what we call extraordinary, because this is extra and not ordinary circumstances here.
I'm quoting directly from the new statute that's being proposed.
I understand. It's all about enunciation.
Oh yeah. No, I hear you. Extraordinary. Yeah. And, you got the person has received a diagnosis of a life-threatening illness. The person has been indicted for a crime. That's specifically directed at Brian Benjamin here. Or third, the person has resigned the office for which they are nominated or designated to run for re-election for whatever reason. And so she's trying to see if she can get this passed. I think I read a little earlier that in the Senate, the leader, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, isn't too thrilled about what she is saying, changing the rules in the middle of the game, because this election is coming up soon. I mean, he's on the ballot. There are other individuals running for that lieutenant governor seat. It is what it is. I mean,
when you say it is what it is, that equates to me as politics as usual, right? Everybody has an interest as to what's going on. Hochul tied her name to Brian. There ain't no two ways about it. She tied her name to it. That's my running mate. We're going to do it. And she tied her name to him at a time and point that the investigation was live and vibrant. This is what we call, I don't want to call it, I'm just going to call it arrogance. Somebody else might say it's the WP, but I'll let y'all figure out what the WP is. But arrogance to think that the investigation was going away and that I'm going to attach my name to this and hocus pocus, everything is going to be as normal. So she tied her name to it. Now the brick is bringing down the person that's swimming. The brick is bringing them down. The anchor is now sinking the ship. And so now that's why Cousins and them are saying, wait a minute, what's going on here? Now all of a sudden you want to switch it, not switch it, but you want to amend this law that's been sitting in the books. It's been touching nobody, just sitting right there. Nobody was being creative. Let's look into this. Let's be forward thinking. You never know what can happen in the future until it affects your one and only. Now, we already know that there's problems with the governor upstate with the passing of this bill at the midnight hour, which happens every now and then, but the ins and outs that went with that. And so it's not making a lot of people have the warm and fuzzies, especially those who are running against her, who saying, wait a minute, let me see what we got on your watch. On your watch, you don't know nothing about what happened with Como. On your watch, you know nothing what happened to Brian Benjamin, even though it was before your time, and he was vetted through you and by a committee, and you attach your name to him. Now,
Well, that's what her opponents are saying. They're saying she exercised bad
I'm not running for
judgment.
governor. I'm not running for governor. I'm not running for governor.
They're saying she exercised bad
Lord.
judgment in selecting Benjamin in the first place, and now she is stuck with him. I mean, let's see what happens. She has been talking about announcing a new running mate. I would imagine that person is going to have to ask to be a write-in candidate, right? That the voters write that person in, which is, extremely tough. But the mayor up in Buffalo was able to do it, so with a certain amount of support and backing, who knows,
And you know what? We're speaking around the elephant in the room, which is actually the indictment against our own Brian, right? And I want to make sure that he understands we support him. I support him, and trying to make sure that there's light at the end of the tunnel. Don't know anything about the facts. All I know is what I read and what I see on the indictment, but that's not the end or be all. And if I can be of assistance, please let me know from a legal perspective and support of you through your most what I call imperil moments.
And if folks want to do the research, you could look up new election law section 6-159 entitled Special Circumstance Declination. That'll have the wording for the law, the bill that's being proposed in this instance. So feel free.
Yeah, I am concerned, like we all saying, he is as a friend. Oops, it's someone that we know and that we want to see the best, happen. We hope there's ways that he will survive this. I mean, other people have survived worse. So,
I must mention that right now this is kind of a tough time because recently the lines, the congressional and state legislative lines that were drawn by the Democrats with control of the state government right now was recently overturned by the courts, including the highest court in New York State, the New York State Court of Appeals. So I don't know what they're going to do. I'm still kind of looking at what the full ramifications of that is going to be. But the Republicans were successful in making their argument that it amounted to some form of gerrymandering. They were able to get a trial court decision from a conservative judge in a conservative county, and unfortunately, that decision has been was affirmed by the appellate division and now by the New York State Court of Appeals. So we're gonna see what's gonna happen. I mean, I have to say because for years the Republicans were extremely successful in maintaining their control of not so much the assembly, but definitely the Senate by way of making sure that their incumbents were protected whenever they had to redraw the line every 10 years. So
a lot to watch while we have power. Well, as we start to close out, I definitely want to shout out the mayor. He had his first 100 days address, and just a little fun video with our Madam Speaker, historic first African-American female speaker, Adrienne Adams, my dear friend, my other good friend, the Chancellor of New York City, David C. Banks, my borough president, Donovan Richards, and one of the hardest working reverends on the team. That's what I say about him all the time. But yesterday was great as he talks about 100 days of getting stuff done. And he gave a very impassioned overview of where we are in the city. and looking at, well, of course, these are some of my photos here that I'm just doing. I'm going to get to the slides where you can see a little highlight, and that's our commissioner of DSS, Commissioner Gary Jenkins, another girlfriend of mine. But I'm just waiting to get to the slide to show you how he's talking about protecting our people, growing our economy, our youth, helping with the homeless issue, and just how many ways in which we've devoted resources to upstream solutions, the budget. Um, and this is our deputy mayor who is in charge of public safety. So just had to shout out my people. Yesterday, it wasn't overnight that New York City is dealing with everything that it's dealing with. He's asking for the 4 years to continue to implement change. And yes, Kevin said he appreciates that he is innocent until proven guilty. So we are here supporting and praying for a good outcome. And as the mayor and the entire team, everyone that is working to make New York safer, to look at what's happening with our children in school, to really do something tangible about the homeless situation, public safety. Everyone's not going to agree with everything that he might propose, but that's why you have to be engaged. You have to be a part of the process and let your voices be heard. This is where the legal meets the cultural, on how we can improve the quality of life for everyone, no matter where we live. Of course, we do this show from New York, so that's why we always highlight what's happening here. But wherever you are, be a part of process, be a part of advocacy, so that we can make the changes that we need to see. So any final?
One thing I can say, yeah, this is my final thought. Then I'll jump right in.
Yeah,
Hey,
we can't
Ed,
hear you as clear.
Okay, can you hear me now? Can you
Yeah.
hear me now?
That's
Can you
much
hear me
better.
now?
Yes.
Okay, one thing I know for sure as a final thought, Ed, you and I, we got to step up our friend game. I'm seeing Dave, the chancellor for the board of ed, and I'm seeing folks left and right. And you and I, I'm in this car and you in your apartment, and we weren't around last night. You know what I'm saying? We definitely got to step up our friend game. This is ridiculous here.
Oh my goodness, Mr. Russell.
Well, I've made it to those in the past. I mean, I'm glad though that our colleague and friend, the good Dr. Grant, was there representing for Speaking Legally.
Exactly.
So I
Everyone for the
get
team.
so you've been there in the past, you've been there in the present. Then let me just speak for myself. I'll step up my friend game. All right. Because you playing the politics.
I got a feeling you've been there too before.
All day and all night.
I got a feeling you've been there before. Anytime
Exactly.
I mention your name, these very famous and well-heeled people.
Look, check it out. I've been there with Hope. Hope and I, we've been there. We've been there.
Yeah, okay.
Hope Springer the Turtle.
Yeah,
Don't listen to him, please. We already know what it is. But it was great to see our mayor articulate his thoughts and ideas, and just really take New York in a direction that is hopeful. And like I said, whether you agree with everything or not, just stay involved.
I saw some of the clips last night on the news, and I heard him say something that was amazing. Something where he was saying, "I'm going to be very hard. It's going to be very hard for you to not like
me."
Yeah, because I'm listening to everybody. I'm listening what they have to say, and I'm trying to address all of their concerns. And quite frankly, it really does seem that way. It seems like, I'm not too sure if any segment of the population of the city of New York can truly say that, the mayor isn't hearing them out, isn't giving them some level of audience as to their concerns, no matter where they're coming from. Whether or not he does what they want him to do is a different story, but, he certainly seems to be receptive to all quarters. So I definitely got to give him that.
He's doing his best, and it was representative of everyone who was in the audience, from all backgrounds, all faiths, etc. So we definitely appreciate the fact that he is opening up bridges to conversation, because it's not going to take one group to make change in New York City. It's going to require all of us to create change.
Now, the beautiful thing is, did he have the portrait of his mother there up on the stage?
And he brought her out.
Oh,
which was so touching. He brought her out with him as he came out, and they played the music, and we all felt that, when it's your mom, and just talking about the fact that she would look at him and say, "You got this, baby." And, that's what he carried. He and our Speaker of the House both lost their mothers in this past year, and she lost her father as well. So to think that, your ancestors can look down on you and be just a guiding force as you do what you do, it's powerful. And he had prayers from the Muslim community, from the Buddhist community, from the Christian community, from the Jewish community. Everybody, he's being intentional about making sure that representative of New York is all the people throughout his administration who he's talking to, hearing from. And with all of these individuals in one city, you think we're always going to agree? No, but we can be intentional about how we treat one another with a level of respect and come to the best decisions for all New Yorkers. It's a road ahead. It's not easy, and it's not going to be overnight that everything changes. But at least what he is sharing, or what he closed with, was there are two types of Americans: New Yorkers and those who wish they were.
I saw recently that we talked about this on the show. Remember, we were talking about the patrolling of the police in the stations.
Mm-hmm.
He's also he also spoke about it the other day. He said that he was, somewhat disturbed by, how some of the patrolling is being done inside of those train stations, and has welcomed the public to send him photographs or complaints directly when they see some level of neglect of duty or misbehavior. And his, what he was in particular was he had issues with officers just standing there looking into their phone and not patrolling the station. He's like, what's going on here? Because he also used to do the same patrol as a patrolman back in the day, and he found himself moving around the station, the train car, etc. So he definitely seems to be paying attention to our show here. And
Well,
well, one of the things I
we're
would
voicing.
say, and we always, one of the things I would say that we need to keep in mind, and I said it before, and it really goes to him, and it goes to other people like Dr. Grant and you, Mr. Pichardo, and myself and others, that at the end of the day, ordinary people in positions of power, hopefully through Eric Adams, could be appreciated, because that's what he's doing. Ordinary person in a position of power, and hopefully New York will appreciate him at the end of his 4 years. May not appreciate him every day, but at the end of the 4 years. And I don't say that to be contrite or slight. It's just that, as Dr. Grant said, we have our up and downs, right? Mm-hmm. Everything I want, I'm not going to get, and everything he wants, he shouldn't get. It's a melting pot. It's a compromise. But ordinary people in position of power, hopefully he'll be appreciated.
Absolutely. And in the other part that, speaking to what you just said, Mr. Pichardo, around safety, he definitely talks about his support for police, which we know, but he also said they need to be held responsible if someone abuses the power that they've been given. So, he's not trying to run away from what's clear and present as issue, and, speaking very strongly about what needs to happen for everyone. So, to be continued, his first 100 days, he can check that box. He reported out, he gave the stats, he gave the numbers. There's still more work to do. So for all of those who live in the city, let's be a part of a collective voice in making life better. And all across the country, stay safe. I'm sending up an extra prayer for the state of Georgia. That's still unnerving me. But we look forward to seeing you next time. Same place, same time. Thank you for tuning in. Stay safe, everyone. COVID is not completely gone, so please be careful as you move about. Any final words, Senor Pichardo?
Well, I hope VP, our vice president, starts feeling a little better. She was recently diagnosed with COVID. So, and speaking to what's happening in COVID-19, I wish her and her family well.
Yes, she said there were no real symptoms, so hopefully that is still the case. And Mr. Russell?
I would just say, let your own wisdom and experience be your best judger of what you should do and not do, and not let one person tell you it's time not to wear a mask, it's time to wear a mask. Do what you know is right within your heart to protect yourself.
Absolutely. And with that, thank you for tuning in, everyone. Great to see you all. Rich, thank you. Kevin, thank you. And those who are catching the replay, hashtag replay, so we know you were here. Bye-bye.